Have you ever finished a card, stepped back and thought, why does this look flat? Because here's the thing, it's probably not your stamps, it's not your inks, and it's definitely not your talent. Today I'm using the Pinkfresh Studio Good Times collection to show you how to avoid a few common mistakes or identify missed opportunities that can keep your cards looking a little boring and how to elevate them with just a few small changes. Let's dive in. This collection includes the floral stamp set. It also includes 5 layering stencils and the coordinating die. I've already used the flowers and sentiment to create this card. Now, this card isn't bad. It's clean. It's simple, there's nothing technically wrong with it, but it's flat, it's predictable. And if your cards sometimes feel boring, chances are you're making one or more of these very common mistakes. So let's walk through how to fix that. I've already done some prep work so I don't waste your time. And here's the first thing I want to talk about, your choice of cardstock. This panel is Neenah Classic Crest, which is a beautiful bright white. This one is a 100-pound Hammermill. Now, Hammermill is a good cardstock. It absolutely has its place, but look at the difference. I use the exact same inks, same stencils, same technique. Everything is identical except the cardstock. This one looks dull and this one looks vibrant. That's the impact of your paper choice. I do use Hammermill for a lot of things like layering, die cutting, etc. But I find that the Neenah Classic Crest cardstock delivers excellent results, especially with die inks. It simply holds and reflects color differently, and the result is much more vibrant. So even a small shift like changing your cardstock can dramatically elevate your design. We all know that leaves are conventionally green, but what happens if you tweak the palette? I keep everything else identical across these panels, same flowers, same layout, and only change the greens, but look at the difference. I do see a little white spot here because I didn't position the stencil correctly. But if I were to ignore that, you can see that a small change in the color palette created a whole different look. Even a small shift in hue can dramatically change the energy of your card. Try unexpected greens, muted tones, warmer tones, cooler tones. You don't need a full redesign, just a thoughtful and intentional tweak. You'll get amazing results if you don't default to the same color combinations. That's how powerful color really is. So let's keep the original card as a reference point and move on to the next one. Here's the next mistake, or I like to think of it as a missed opportunity. And this is big. The missed opportunity lies in not using colored card bases and always reaching for white. I used to be guilty of this, but things shifted the moment I decided to go more colorful. Let me trim this A2 panel down by 1/4 of an inch all around. So it's 5 1/4 by 4 inches, and then mount it onto a colored card base. I'll use a temporary adhesive so I can use the same panel multiple times and avoid wasting them during the demo. Look at this green base. So much better already, right? The contrast makes everything pop. And if you like watching my videos and find them helpful, I'd love for you to give this video a like and do subscribe to my channel. And if you want to join me for monthly craft along sessions, just click the join button that should appear on the screen somewhere. The fourth missed opportunity for a lot of card makers is not adding layers to give the design more depth and dimension. Let's try the Spellbinders Alabaster cardstock instead of the white. This looks slightly improved, but still pretty flat, right? But what if I used a black matte with it? That's going to make it really pop. I find the easiest way to cut panels is to use layering dies because I don't have to struggle with measurements and I get beautifully polished edges on the layers. So instead of just manually trimming this panel down, I'll use the Master Layouts 2 dies from Neenah K, which is the easiest way to get perfectly even layers and a beautifully finished edge. What I love about this set is that it creates both the top panel and the perfectly sized matting layer. I ended up cutting an extra gold matte and I'll show you the different variations I can have with the black and the gold. Look at how striking this is with the black. Now, if I use the gold, completely different mood. more elegant. Same design, same florals, just one additional layer. Under normal circumstances, I die cut the center out of the gold to conserve my specialty cardstock, but since I'm using temporary adhesive for this demo, I won't cut into it prematurely. Another missed opportunity is keeping the focal point flat. There's technically nothing wrong with that, but giving it some dimension greatly elevates the design. I've cut out the floral piece using the coordinating die. This one is from the Hammermill panel. Now, if I just use the floral die cut directly on the card base, it adds a little bit of lift, but still looks pretty flat. But let's add some dimensional foam tape that I get from my local dollar store. By the way, if you're looking for the list of supplies, I have affiliate links in my blog post, which I've linked in the video description. If you use the links in case you decide to purchase any of these supplies, I will earn a tiny commission without any extra cost to you, but it will definitely help support my channel. So thank you so much if you decide to support me. I'll leave the release paper on for now since I'm just demonstrating. Look at the shadow it creates because it's raised off of the background. That lift, that subtle dimension makes such a difference. Flat is fine, but dimension is better. The focal point pops off the background. I could also use one of the layers I cut out and pop the floral on it. Absolutely gorgeous, isn't it? This next one is huge and it's something all designers use, but a lot of card makers don't think of, and it's called the rule of thirds. I used this all the time when I was a professional photographer, and here are a couple of examples to show you what I mean. Here's a photo from our local tulip festival. The rule of thirds is basically a photography composition guideline that divides an image into a 3x3 grid, which is basically 9 equal parts. And instead of centering a subject, placing key elements such as a person or horizon along these lines or at their 4 intersection points creates a more balanced, engaging, and professional looking photo. You can see that I've placed the tulip right along the upper thirds, which immediately draws the viewer's attention to it. Same thing with the butterfly. It's right along the left third. Now, with these vertical images, even though the mom-to-be is centered, the most important element, which is the face, is in the upper third, and the hand cupping the belly is at the intersection of the thirds. And finally, in this one, the girl is entirely along the left third. These compositions create interest and make the images dynamic. Here I created a little acetate guide with Sharpie lines dividing this panel into thirds. This one is an A2 panel, but you can create a guide for your preferred card sizes as well. Instead of placing the floral bang in the center, what if I shifted to the intersection point? If I trim the overhanging bits, and let's remove the guide so you can get an idea of how that actually looks. Do you see how dynamic and pretty that looks already? Now, what if I place it in the bottom third? I created a sample sentiment already, and I can place that here. Now, if I place the guide back, you can see the floral and the sentiment are both on the thirds, and that makes the design more interesting. The eye naturally moves to those intersecting lines. That's why photographers and designers use the rule of thirds to create visual energy. Now imagine trimming off the overhanging leaves on this side. Now compare this to the original centered version. It's a big difference when I recompose the design using the rule of thirds. Another missed opportunity is not adding texture to your design. I used a Pinkfresh Studio cover plate to create this beautiful die cut panel, and now even if I add the floral die cut bang in the center, it still looks beautiful. And if I put it off to the side, it's another beautiful option. I embossed this panel with the same cover plate die instead of cutting it to create a variation, and the texture is more subtle on this. The die cut version creates a bolder texture. The embossed version is a more subtle variation. Both elevate the design instantly. Additionally, I embossed this panel using the die cut instead of the die. And you can see the texture is even more subtle, and I think I'm loving this more. This, of course, is personal preference, and you can use whichever version you like. If I keep the floral off to the side and pretend there's no overhang here, the texture alone makes the card feel more finished. Texture adds sophistication without clutter. Compare this now to the original, and I think you can see it for yourself. Let's try another composition, and for that I'll use my matting templates. If you're curious about this, I picked up this hack from another crafter, and I'll leave a link to that hack's video in the description below. I can see that I need to cut down my embossed panel to 4 3/4 by 3.5 inches. And now when I use that over the black mat, place the flower in the top corner, you see how much more interesting the design has become? If I choose to use this version, I could simply adhere the white panel to the black mat, adhere the die cut, and then trim off the overhang. Again, no right or wrong here. It's your creative decision. I could also do a white on white look for this with the embossed panel, and this too looks very elegant. And when embossing, you get one side that's raised and the other side that's debossed, and you have an option to see which side you prefer. Having a couple of cover plate dies is very helpful for creating simple but elevated card designs. You could also use embossing folders, press plates, hot foil plates, or stencils to create texture. I'm going to do something a little daring in the next one, so keep watching. Another mistake or missed opportunity is not taking creative risks. I'll use one of these panels and cut out the floral motif. I'll use the embossed panel that has the subtle texture I created using the die cut background panel. I'll apply some foam tape to the back and adhere this part of the die cut. I'm sure some of you are getting a heart attack right about now, since it looks like I'm destroying such a pretty design, but please wait for the finished look. I'll use my trimmer instead of my scissors since I want a really clean and straight cut. I'll need to trim this down just a little bit more. I apologize, I didn't realize I was out of frame here, but I was trying to determine if I needed to trim further. I'll raise the gold panel on foam tape, and yeah, I should have cut out the center, but I forgot to do that. And now look at the comparison. Original, flat, centered, predictable. The new version is layered, textured, dimensional, rule of thirds applied. Same stamps, same florals, different design decisions. Another missed opportunity is that a lot of crafters love the look of vellum but are afraid to use it or don't know how. Now here's a card base I created using a thick vellum panel that I first ink blended with complementary colors and then embossed it. Even placing the floral directly over the design creates something soft and elegant. I can place a white panel or note card inside to write a message, and it's so pretty. You can also use vellum as a full overlay, use half as a design split. You can create a belly band with it and wrap it around the card front. Let me show you a belly band example on this one and place it in the bottom third. Now, what if I use a vellum overlay on the card front? The design looks diffused, and when you open the card, surprise, the full floral design is revealed. It adds interaction and elegance at the same time, and by placing the sentiment over the vellum overlay helps it pop. And I use thick vellum and minimal glue behind the sentiment so the glue doesn't show through. Add a white panel inside and the card is complete. Here's the final comparison. Here's the original, nice but flat. Here's the elevated version. Better cardstock, unconventional color palette on this one, additional matting, added texture and dimension, and using the rule of thirds. And here's the vellum version with a soft overlay, colored card base, and an interactive element. Again, same stamp set, but 9 simple design fixes that make a huge difference. I'd love to know in the comments if you're planning to try any of these ideas on your next card project. I recently made a video on how to use vellum to elevate your cards, and you can watch that video here.